April 26, 1945. Berlin is dying. Soviet artillery is turning the city into rubble. The streets are craters. The sky is a wall of flak so dense that Allied pilots refuse to fly through it. Everyone who can escape is running for their lives. One person is flying in. A small plane cuts through the smoke at low altitude, threading between bursting shells. Inside, a woman is at the controls. No orders. No one commanded her to be here. She came on her own. And what she said when she finally escaped that burning city would leave American interrogators unable to speak. She called it the blackest day of her life. Not because Berlin was burning, not because the war was lost, because she had not been permitted to die at Hitler's side. Her name is Hanna Reitsch, and by the time this story is over, you will understand exactly how a woman becomes that. Before the war ended, she would propose something so extreme that even Hitler's generals had refused to consider it. She would climb inside a weapon, not fly it, be part of it. She would see evidence of what was happening in the camps and choose to protect the men responsible. And then the world would let her walk free. This is how that happened. Reitsch was born in 1912 in Hirschberg, Silesia. From childhood, she was consumed by flight. By her mid-20s, she had become the most decorated female pilot in Europe, more than 40 world records. In a field owned entirely by men, she was not just competing, she was winning. The regime noticed immediately. The Nazis built her into a symbol. Newsreels, rallies, propaganda magazines, living proof that German excellence reached into the sky. And here is what most accounts leave out. She was not flying despite the Nazis. She was flying for them, willingly, every single day. She never joined the Nazi Party. She never needed to. Her devotion was personal, total, and chosen freely. The regime rewarded that devotion with increasingly lethal assignments, and the first one nearly killed her. In 1943, she was asked to test fly the Messerschmitt 163 Comet, not an airplane, a wooden frame strapped to a rocket engine capable of 900 kilometers per hour. Test pilots had already died in it. Reitsch climbed in anyway. The landing skid failed. Full speed into the ground. Skull fractures, a crushed jaw, 5 months in a hospital bed. The moment she could walk again, she went back to the cockpit. The Comet was not the most dangerous thing she would fly. What came next was not even designed to carry a human being. The V-1 was not a plane. It was a bomb. And Hanna Reitsch volunteered to sit inside one. It carried nearly a ton of explosives aimed directly at London. The early guidance systems kept missing, so someone proposed putting a pilot inside to steer it, then bail out at the last moment. At those speeds, ejection was almost certainly fatal. This was not a mission, it was a sentence. Reitsch raised her hand. The cockpit was a cramped cavity cut into a flying bomb, deafening, vibrating so violently that staying conscious required constant effort. She flew it anyway, multiple times. Her test data went directly to engineers making that weapon more accurate over London neighborhoods. She knew exactly what the V-1 was for. She helped make it better, but even that was not enough. On February 28, 1944, Reitsch walked into a meeting with Adolf Hitler and proposed something his own generals had refused to consider. She called it Operation Suicide. Volunteer pilots, explosive-laden aircraft crashed directly into Allied targets. A European kamikaze program. She had not been ordered to develop this. She conceived it herself and brought it to Hitler directly. Hitler hesitated. Reitsch pressed. She recruited approximately 70 volunteers willing to die for the mission. She trained them on a manned version of the V-1 flying bomb. Up to 175 of these manned missiles were actually built. The unit was named the Leonidas Squadron, after the Spartan king who died holding the pass at Thermopylae. These men were expected to die. Reitsch volunteered to lead the first mission herself. The squadron was never deployed. Allied advances overtook the program before it could be used. Berlin would answer the question of who she really was. April 1945. The Reich is finished. Berlin is surrounded. Any rational person with access to an aircraft is flying away. Reitsch flew toward it. Soviet flak tore through the fuselage on approach. Shrapnel destroyed her passenger's right foot. He slumped forward, bleeding. Reitsch reached past him, grabbed the controls, and landed on a shell-cratered road near the Brandenburg Gate. She spent 2 days in the bunker with Hitler. He promoted her companion to field marshal. He gave them both cyanide capsules as a gift. Reitsch tried to convince Magda Goebbels to let her take the children out. Magda refused. Those children would be poisoned by their own mother days later. Then Hitler ordered them to leave. Reitsch flew out through Soviet flak in the early hours of April 29. She escaped. For a moment, consider what she had just survived. A burning city, a shattered aircraft, 2 days underground while the world collapsed above her. Reitsch's only regret was leaving. Under American interrogation, she described departing Berlin as the blackest day of her life. Not the skull fractures, not the suicide program, not the war itself, leaving Hitler's side. She called the bunker an altar of the fatherland, said these things freely, passionately to interrogators who could barely believe what they were hearing. At some point during the war, Reitsch had come across a pamphlet circulating in Stockholm. It described what was happening inside the camps, documented, systematic, on an industrial scale, the kind of detail that left no room for misunderstanding. She had that evidence in her hands. Her response was not horror, not disbelief, not silence, not a single question. She went directly to Heinrich Himmler and told him he needed to counter the accusations, not investigate them, not confront what they described, manage the story. Himmler told her it was enemy propaganda. Reitsch accepted that and moved on. She had seen the evidence. She chose the regime. American forces captured her after the war. 18 months of interrogation as a technical witness. Weapons, rockets, the bunker. She was useful, and useful people rarely face tribunals. She had never been a party member. On paper, a civilian test pilot. They released her. No charges, no trial, nothing. While Europe buried its dead, Hanna Reitsch was winning trophies again. 1952, World Gliding Championships. 1955, German Gliding Champion. India invited her to train pilots. Ghana gave her a school. And on May 4th, 1961, she stood in the White House and shook hands with President John F. Kennedy, 16 years after flying into Hitler's bunker in the Oval Office. Through all of it, every handshake, every trophy, every country that welcomed her back, she never wavered. In the 1970s, she told a journalist she was not ashamed to say she still believed in National Socialism. She still wore the Iron Cross Hitler had given her, and then she said the thing that removes every remaining doubt. They don't explain the real guilt we share, that we lost. Not the Holocaust, not the millions dead, not the young men she had sent toward certain death in flying bombs. The guilt was losing the war. Hanna Reitsch died August 24, 1979 in Frankfurt. Official cause, heart attack. That same month, British test pilot Eric Brown received a letter from her. It ended with one line. It began in the bunker. There it shall end. Brown knew she had kept the cyanide capsule Hitler gave her in April 1945. He believes she finally used it. No autopsy was ever made public. The capsule was never found. Von Grimm had used his immediately after capture in 1945. Reitsch had waited 34 years. She is buried in Salzburg, steps from his grave. She never faced a court, never faced consequences. She outlived the Reich by 3 decades, shook hands with presidents, and went to her grave believing the only mistake had been losing. The world gave her that.